Anish on Príomh óráid, the main talk now will be given by Pól Ruiséal.
Tá sé gceiste gom sa labhair in jobh, ní raibh mé ró ada a fad tuisc na haimsir a bheith mar atá. Ach tír biscéile is mai lomsa nuair a bhí míad in áit le mar seo tamil amach ó chorpaig a thugtain ara díreach cá bhuiile míad. Díreach chun a rá libh go bhfuil leistíí ar daoine an san, céann sibh na falaí an sa, ag dul an trá sin chó fada leis an áing an sin hawl, sin é an Mhainistir. Mhainistir na Móna, nó Mhainistir na Mourna, tá cím an dá legende ann. Bunaíocha, it was founded in 1199 and it was dissolved in 1541 by edict of Henry VIII and given to the local Taoiseach of Eagraithe, being the McCarthy clan. Running down by the side of it is Glac na Mhainistir, just over there. And you'll see it if you walk just as far as the rocks right there. You'll see this stream called the Abbey Stream when you look in the Ordnance Survey. And right behind you is the very wide and quite substantial river of the Caighdeáin. So you've all heard of the Caighdeáin rovers, you know about them. And the river figured, of course, in the ambush as well. Now, keep in mind that south of us, which south is that direction, where Tomás Mac Chuchtáin was born in Luíochán, and north of us would be Mallow and Limerick and so forth. East is actually behind us, west is in that direction, out there. So the hÓglaigh, the Nagle Mountains, the Bogaras, and keeping in mind there were 4 positions involved in this ambush. Luíochán, the land of the hillocks, of the hills, of the drumlins, there are lots of them. When you just look at the landscape around you here, you see drumlins and hillocks. Ideal country for guerrilla warfare. So there were 4 of positions involved, and the one which was encircled actually was on the eastern side, on this side here behind us. But we'll come to that in a moment. Now, this is the place, of course, of legendary names like Bliain na Móna, Rahan Dótáin or Burnfort, Clochín, Dromore, Dromaháin. Dromaháin is to the northwest of us, in that direction up there, right? And then you have Buing na Meal or Buing, Coiste Neamhspleách, and of course there was a company here which was involved as well, Lombardstown, while you're on board. Now, as well as that, you'll notice having come in here today, we travelled over the railway, so it was at a very strategic point here, a very important area. The old Cork Road, the main old Cork Road was that very road there. So the army, the lorries of British soldiers were to come along here, and they would have been attacked and would have been targeted as enemy forces from the hillocks surrounding here. The railway station, of course, then was opened in 1892, closed in 1963. Another important factor about this place was this is where Tomás Mac Chuchtáin was born. About 3 miles down the road there, you pass on the Lianta Bridge, and on further, you continue on and you come to Luíochán, and there is a very beautiful monument which was refurbished on the 20th of March last year, exactly 100 years since he was murdered in Blackpool in Cork, and it's well worth taking a look at, that particular monument. Now, he wasn't involved in the ambush here, and to be corrected on that if that's wrong, but I don't think he was, because I have the names of all the various companies and so forth. In medieval times, the area was known in Irish as An Bhóin Mhuir, or the Great Bog. It was the bog, if you like, between the Nagles at this side and the Bogaras at the other side. An Bhogarach, meaning very soft land, very soft territory. And after the abbey was founded, it was named Mhainistir na Móna, and I leave the history except to say that it was built around 1199 by the Knights Templar, emanating from Jerusalem in the Holy Land, and later turned over to the Knights Hospitaller of St. John. You all know about the Knights of Malta, of course, and this particular group set up their monasteries in Malta, around Europe, and also in Mournrabbey, because they thought this site was absolutely ideal for such a foundation. After the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII, The abbey was granted by English edict, at that time to the McCarthys. So just a few words about Tomás McCartáin until we get into just the ambush details. Born in Mournrabbey on the 20th of March 1884, he was the son of Patrick Curtin, a farmer, and Julia Sheehan. In 1895, the family moved to Cork City, where he attended Northmont. Now, I won't go into the details, you're aware of them, I'm quite sure. But you also know that as well as his work as in the political and in the military and in the organizational spheres, he was also an accomplished musician. He held a deep love for music during his life. He played both the war pipes and the fiddle. Indeed, Tomás, from out the road there, you could say, he even found the time to play the fiddle while in Frangach prison after the 1916 Rising. I'll just mention his favourite song was The Lark in the Clear Air, which he played at all hours whenever the mood took him. On the 20th of March, on his 36th birthday, McCurtain was shot dead in front of his wife and young son, by a group of men with blackened faces who were later identified by the official inquest as being members of the Royal Irish Constabulary. Okay, telescoping down, the man who ordered his murder was the RIC District Inspector Oswald Swansea, who had ordered the attack. He was fatally shot with McCurtain's own revolver whilst leaving a Protestant church in Lisburn, County Antrim on August 22nd, 1920. We spoke of the monument down there, and it's, as you know, it's built exactly where he was born. It has the words on it, Is an seo a rugach Tomás McCartáin, Canafort Céad Brigad Corcaigh, Aram Publichtach na Héireann, Ord Vera Chahar Corcaigh. Hún varig fórsaí na Breataine an Vihadulá the Warta, Bliain agus Fiche. So back to the ambush. Rashkadi Luíochán Mór Mhainistir na Móna. Luíochán, as you know, is the word in Irish for ambush. Agus an Slecht of when the Luíoch the Saoirse, and it was exactly tomorrow morning, 100 years ago to the day, that this occurred, on the 15th of February 1921. So we're dead on time, and the summary of the event was the Mallow Battalion column under Jack Cunningham, with the battalion commandant, Tig Byrne, also present. I was privileged a few minutes ago to meet the son of Tig Byrne, who's here with us today. They lay in ambush on the old Mallow Cork Road at Mournrabbey, but to their amazement, on the eastern side, that's the side behind us, they were surrounded by a strong British force. 3 volunteers were killed, Patrick Flynn, Patrick Dorgan and Eamon Creedon, a farmer from the area, and again, somebody else was speaking to me earlier on, some details on Eamon Creedon. Another dies of his wounds, Michael Looney. 8 volunteers are taken prisoner, and 2 of them are subsequently executed on the 28th of April after a court-martial. These were Patrick Ronayne and Thomas Mulcahy. Now, it's very interesting, we are here in a very, very special, very iconic site in many ways, and take note of the beautiful monument that's there, óráid. And I'm just going to walk out here for a moment, just to let you know the symbols that are on the monument. You have the symbol of the state, the very top is the heart, the heart of the government, if you like, the heart of what's going on in Ireland, is happened right here. The camera and the volunteer dressed in the uniforms would have been at the time. Now the names I read out to you there are all there in the Irish language. In English at this side, and the man who made this monument was in 1945, Kirill Holland was his name. And the Holland, they specialise in this in Cork City, the building of such beautiful and stately monuments. So the words actually as well, just as we're talking about the Irish language, at the very top you have Dinish Begia, put right there, Dinish Begia, pictures of God, August, the Erin. So Tanelor are left, even Liamamol Kaha, and Dolaka Binay are the other 2. So the most serious reverse suffered by a battalion of the 2nd Cork Brigade occurred right here in Mhainistir na Móna, a few miles from Mallow, on the 15th of February 1921. The Mallow Battalion column under Commandant Jack Cunningham occupied a position about a mile south of Mournrabbey, that was in that direction. right there. A conference of senior British officers was being held at division headquarters in Cork around that time, and the intention was to attack a convoy travelling to or from the conference. 13 IRA riflemen were posted on the rising ground west of the main road in that direction. Sections armed with shotguns were also positioned on the eastern side of the road, which would be on the Abbey side. Scouts were posted, and all was ready by the early hours of the morning of the 15th of February. Cycling into Mallow on the Burnfort Road that morning, a local lady, perhaps the local people could tell us a bit more about this lady, Siobhan Langford. She encountered 2 lorry loads of troops and police. Aware that an IRA operation was planned for Mournrabbey, she immediately became suspicious of the mission of the occupants of the 2 enemy lorries. When she reached Mallow, she asked Daniel MacDonald, the Mallow Company intelligence officer, to get to Mournrabbey forthwith and warn the officers there. MacDonald cycled to Mournrabbey. Now, you're talking here cycling 2 or 3 miles. We're very near to Mallow here on the north side, along the main road, and she located the battle commandant at Tyburn, whom we've already mentioned, near the southern end, just at that side actually, of the ambush position. Together, they crossed the Clyde, a river flowing parallel, which is the one actually, I didn't mention there while it was the one exactly behind you there. That's the Clyde River right there, Clyde Rovers, and the streams, several of them running off the hills into that river. But to the position where Colin Cunningham was with the riflemen. But they were unfortunately too late. Within a few minutes, firing started to the northeast of the ambush position. Firing started in that direction. Protective sections there were engaging British troops. Reports came in indicating the presence of enemy forces on 3 sides of that position. Suddenly, the eastern column, found that it was in the role of ambushed rather than the ambusher. The British forces were equipped with machine guns and armoured vehicles. In the circumstances, the column was forced to withdraw, fighting its way out as best as it could. Sections to the west of the road were lucky in that 1 British detachment was slow in taking up position. People camped at that side, leaving a gap through which they were able to retreat northwestwards, which is Dromahane. Dromahane is to the northwest of where we are right now, towards Dromahane. However, the sections on the eastern side, where the first shots were fired, fared badly. 3 men, we've already mentioned their names, were shot dead. Another man, Michael Looney, died later of his wounds. 8 prisoners were taken, of whom 2 were subsequently executed in Cork. And I'll move on. This was in the Cork County Jail, which is currently UCC Science Building, the new Science Building in UCC on the Western Road. That was the Cork County Jail, and this was where they were executed. Now, the thing about all of these volunteers, and there were 4 companies involved. There was the Mallow Company, there was the Lombardstown Company, there was the Burnfort Company, there was the Analianta Company. These were all part of the Mallow Battalion, as far as I can see. I'm going from the reporters in the National Military Archives. Now, there were 4 companies. It's amazing the amount of people locally who are involved in this. This was really, really amazing. There were at least 50 men, if not more, involved in among the volunteers. In the Mallow Battalion alone, there were 550 volunteers. And it was a whole population movement. This happened like at the centre of the revolution, really, at every level that was going on in Ireland at the time, at every level of society. And this is not at all, it's not underlined, but I wish to underline that. The amount of people that are involved. And the other thing I want to underline is the age group. They were aged 18 to 30. They were all very young men, very idealistic and patriotic, brave, courageous, and they were in every parish and district. But of course, their number was in danger of being seriously depleted by enemy forces as the war wore on, as the war progressed. And another point I'd like to mention, the third point, is how well organized all of these hundreds of young volunteers were. You had within you had 4 companies in the Mallow Battalion. You then had the versatile flying columns. You had 1 battalion, this was 1 battalion of the 2nd Cork Brigade. Thomas McCurtain was himself as commandant of the 1st Cork Brigade. So you had companies, battalions, columns, brigades, and the whole thing organised to a T on a really professional, absolutely military basis. They meant business. Our predecessors really meant business when they were involved in all of this. And the companies, as I told you already, were Mallow, Lombardstown, Burnfort, and Annalynta Company. They were the four companies. Now, the problem, though, which did occur on the end, was a huge problem. It was the one of informers. And this is an example of where that occurred. And any local historians here, you're welcome to correct me on the following. I'll just mention it in brief. The name of informer William Shields has been already alluded to, perhaps, if I think I have. The IRA eventually discovered that news of its planned ambush at Mournrabbey had been given away to British intelligence officers. The informer was allegedly Daniel or William Shields. He was also responsible for a raid 2 weeks later on 2 Republican columns at Nad, near Bantir, in the Bogra Mountains. Nad is to the north, Wales to the west of us, northwest. Nad, as you know, of course, is Nad on hÓglaigh. Nad meaning nest, Shullar eagle, so it's the eagle's nest, Nad on hÓglaigh, in the Bogra Mountains, in which 3 volunteers lost their lives. Shields actually was a British intelligence agency of local extraction, where he had previously been, he succeeded in joining the Canturk column of the IRA, which again is very near to us here. So it came to light that Shields had been seen drinking in Canturk public houses and had in fact called to the RSE barracks there on the eve of the roundup at Nad. And he was identified by the local public house owner, but he was able to get away, and he got away with another informer called Cruxy O'Connor, Cruxy. He was most likely helped to escape with this informer by the British. There were no claims, I have seen no claims by the IRA to have killed them or to have tracked them down following these disastrous military engagements here and in Nad. But at this time, guerrilla attacks on the forces of occupation were occurring on an almost weekly basis. On the very same morning, I just have to mention this, because the very same morning, some hours earlier, as the Mournrabbey engagement right here, it was at 10:18 a.m. at Upton train station on the line between Cork City and Bandon. At least 11 people were killed in a courageous and vicious 10-minute firefight between about 13 Republican fighters and some 70 British enemy soldiers travelling on the train, interspersed with members of the public. The huge problem in Upton, of course, was that of those that were killed, 8 were civilians. And this is rare. The IRA had things very well organised, on the ground, organisationally, and diplomatically and everything. And rarely did it occur. But it did occur in Upton, that there were civilians, actually, 8 of them. Very, very unusual. But again, the situation itself was unusual, and we'll find out more about that later on, perhaps, when we go to the Upton celebrations later, or commemoration, sorry. So the threat of the informer was ever present, and one such other informer named hÓglaigh pre-warned the British prior to the Crossbarry engagement on March 19th, 1921. So Crossbarry was another case. The information that hÓglaigh gave to the British very nearly led to the surrounding and annihilation of the 3rd Cork Brigade's flying column, March 19 at Crossbarry. In the ensuing fighting, Charlie Hurley was killed, as mentioned, along with 3 other IRA men. Tom Barry managed to extricate the rest of the column in the process, killing 10 British soldiers. So Crossbarry has been called the landmark of success for the IRA, and even it's been called as well the decisive battle of the War of Independence. This was continuing on, but as it wore on, it was perhaps the last major engagement between an IRA flying column and British forces in Cork before the truce, which is coming up on the 11th of July same year. IRA ammunition was very low, but could be replenished, and more British troops were flooding into the country, making stand-up fights of this kind more and more difficult to pull off. But Republican resolve and determination remained steadfast and total, indeed unshakable. And you will not read that in the revisionist descriptions of what actually happened. what you, well, I won't go into it, but there's another side to the story. They give that it was that they were on the way out, etc., etc. They were not. That's not the case, to my knowledge. So the last major operation of the 3rd Cork Brigade was a successful attack and brought about the destruction of Rosscarbery RIC barracks. But at this time, there are events occurring every weekend, every few days. You had the Rosscarbery RIC barracks, and I'll just fly through some of these. You had the Upton situation. You had the battle at Clonmult, for example, and you had Headford, that's another one. The IRA also hit British patrols hard at ambushes at Pool of Óglaigh on the 25th of February, Clonbauneen on the 5th of March, killing 7 enemy forces. In Cork City, and I finished on this one, on February the 29th, in retaliation for the execution of 6 of their men, the IRA shot and killed 6 off-duty British soldiers and wounded 5 more. So it was really effervescent. It was really a case of total rejection, total revolution against the powers of the time that were. And Headford we mentioned as well, where 3 civilians were killed there, along with 10 British soldiers. On the case of Upton, you perhaps all remember the song in the 1960s. It was a dance hall ballad written about the Upton ambush. It was banned from RTE from 1969 to 1990. The chorus, you do remember, let the moon shine out tonight along the valley, where those lads who fought for freedom now are lain. May they rest in peace, those men who died for Ireland and who fell at Upton Woods for Sinn Féin. So I just mentioned the Upton and the Mournrabbey because really they happened practically at the same time. So, concrete nu, mar hátal chuimse. In conclusion, I ggóthaíocht chogan na saoirse, ná de rúdamis, cad leis ar bhain, an strachaid, agus an íbert olivúr ar fad, a bhí á dhéanamh ar Coiste Neamhspleách in Éireann. We heard the proclamation of 1916, and that was key to what was going on, declaring the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland, to the unfettered control, the long usurpation of that right by foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished, and so forth. Bine an rud a bhí i gceist. It is important to look at what was all this about. What were we on about? What was this struggle all for? Look at the proclamation of 1916. Study it closely. Bine bhí i gceist, céad bliain ó hin, sin é atá i gcónaí i gceist in jobh, níor buinneach amach an ís bhunúsach. The vision as outlined, I would strongly argue, was never fully realised. Tá an dúshlán, the challenge, an dúshlán á gcónaí, an ís a hútal drí agus a bhaint amach. The ís, people say, oh, it's only a vision, it's only a dream. These were fulfillable visions, dreams, and goals, realisable, and they're yet to be fulfilled, yet to be realised. Agus cinte darlum, gur cospóirí I shahid, they are attainable, they are so yenta, agus lastig dar gummas, mar phobal éireann, níl éon áras in éireann mar ghaol ar sin, ach sin scéal de lá eile, sin dúshlán de lá eile, gá míle buchas liv as éiste clum sa ré agus sa bháiste an sa jobh, go marisibh céad bliain eile ar a liad agus bhór daracha léir éire or ógra nédige sé diag a bú. May the 1916 Easter Proclamation continue to flourish, to inspire, and eventually be brought to fruition. Míle maith.